Hi, I'm Dr. Navjot Kaur, and with me is Dr. Sumit Sekho. And together we have founded a research consultancy called Southnik Solutions. And through this research consultancy, we have started a storytelling project to document the changing environment of Punjab through people's memories. With this project, we want to map how Punjab's environment has changed in the past couple of decades and is still constantly changing for the worse. So, the environmental markers that once defined Punjab's landscape, ecosystem, and community in the past are no longer there or are drastically changed. But they are still alive in people's memories and those people who lived through all that change. So most of the environmental degradation is caused by agrarian practices that the Green Revolution encouraged. So it fundamentally changed the way that people did agriculture, the unchecked use of chemicals, unchecked water withdrawal from the ground, etc. So now we get reports and research almost every year saying that it's beyond repair. So, in addition to that, we are also getting extreme weather events such as flooding every year, and then there's irregular rainfall, extreme heat, and climate change. But Punjab is still not considered when we talk about global climate change. So, in an effort to document these changes in the environment and to document people's emotions tied with these places and their changing sense of place, we have started interviewing people to see how they feel about these changes and how they feel about the environment that has changed and is no longer the way they used to remember it. So, today's episode is based on one of those interviews and our reflections on it. So, just to start the conversation, first we will talk about our memories of the environment growing up in Punjab in the 90s or 80s or 2000s. So, because even the environmental markers, the trees, landscapes that we remember are no longer there or they have dramatically changed. So, to start with, Sumit, would you like to go first?
Sure, yeah, I'll do that. Thanks, Navjot. Great introduction. I just wanted to add just a little bit about why it's important, at least why we think that the project is important. So, Punjab is a very important contributor to the food security of India. It is India's largest producer of food grains, especially wheat and rice. And also, Punjab, the surplus wheat and rice that's produced in Punjab is also sent out to exported to the global market. So it is an important player in the availability of food grains throughout the world. And so what happens in Punjab is not just local, climate change events, which and like you said, the agricultural practices which were structurally changed by the Green Revolution, all the negative impacts on the agriculture because of those events, um, that will have implications not only for India, but for the whole world. So just want to add that in. But yeah, your question of our own memories of the environment. So I've been thinking about this all morning. There's so many. And the one memory that I picked that I want to talk about is drinking rainwater as a child, right? So, like you said, we grew up in the 80s and 90s. I remember this must be, I think, late 80s that I'm talking about. And there was this idea that when the monsoons come in the months of July and August, it was such a joyful time. Like everyone was looking forward to the monsoons. You would have this gentle rain which would fall continuously for 3 to 4 days at least. And everything, all the flowers, the grass, the trees, the little plants, the weeds, all of these little living things which had been sort of, on the verge of death because of the extreme heat in the preceding months, in the months of May and June. all these little plants would come back to life almost magically. And so, there would be flowers in abundance and everything was green. Also, all the dust would get washed away from the leaves and plants. And as you know, in Punjab's folklore, and more broadly speaking, the folklore of India, there is such romanticism attached to the monsoons.
Yeah.
So I think everybody was happy. So I just generally enjoyed the monsoons because everyone was happy. And then there are specific things that people would cook during the monsoons, like sweets and
Puri.
and pakode, right? So yeah, that was all very good. But the one memory that I want to talk about in specific was this idea that the rainwater is very pure.
Mm.
And so, like my parents would say, oh, you can drink the rain. It's the purest water that you will find.
Yeah.
Right. And it was, if you collected rainwater in a small bowl or something and you drank it, it was sweet. It was good water, right? And you can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So I tried this last year when I was in Punjab and I collected rainwater and I said, okay, let me try and taste it because this is also a subject of everyday conversation, how there is so much environmental pollution now. So I collected rainwater, tried drinking it. It doesn't taste good anymore. So yeah, that's my memory. What about you?
That's beautiful. Yeah, that just reminded me that during monsoon season, I remember um, little frogs and snails would come out. They would come out of nowhere. There were like hundreds of them in our house courtyard when it would rain. And that was we used to catch those frogs, but they are no longer there when it rains now because I think there's lack of like muddy places now that they used to live in or the frogs used to lay their eggs in or whatever that was. So it's all like pakka, it's all concrete and everything. There's no place for them to come out to or come out from the snails and frogs. So that was nice. That reminded me of that little thing. Yeah. So and about rainwater, it used to be the purest form of water, and we used to kill our pith. We used to have this prickly heat on our backs during summers because of the extreme heat, and children used to wash off their pith or kill off their pith in the rains. So that was a very that was I think almost every kid used to do that. Whenever it rained, they used to go and dance out in the rain. Yeah, and my memories are also the core memories that I have with the environment about the environment is also related to like pre-monsoon showers or pre-monsoon winds that we used to get. So we used to live in a place where there was an abundance of mango trees. So it was a place called Shanair Colony. So it was meant for the people who worked in the irrigation department in the Shanair. So my father used to work with the irrigation department as an engineer. So there used to be so many mango trees, and whenever it was windy, whenever the haneris used to be there, so the mangoes would drop, the small raw mangoes, and we used to go to collect them. Then even at night, whenever, so that other people cannot get to them before we do. So we used to fill our bags with raw mangoes and like took them home, and our moms would then make achar out of those raw mangoes. So that was one of the things that we used to wait for those pre-monsoon winds and pre-monsoon even showers because they will give you relief from the heat. And that was a thing that we looked forward to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So I think so. These were our own memories, but these
Mm.
are, like we said, from the late 80s, early 90s. But for the sake of the project, we wanted to go back further into
Mm-hmm.
time. And so the memories that we are attempting to collect are from the 1970s or maybe even 60s, if we can find someone who experienced the environment at that time. But the conversation that we're going to be discussing today is like you said, Navjot, it's the first interview that we conducted, and it's with a man who was growing up in the 1970s.
You are on mute.
That's great. I've been talking all this time.
No,
Sorry.
it had been on mute for 2 seconds.
Oh, for 2 seconds only. So
Mhm.
what, should I
It's
just
fine.
do the whole thing again?
Yeah. No, I think we can just cut out that part.
Okay. So our conversation today is based on the first interview that we conducted for this project. And the interviewee was a person who was growing up in the 1970s. So we found that the interviewee's experiences with the natural environment were very closely intertwined with social realities of that time, which is often the case, especially for rural agrarian societies in the global south, since livelihoods are directly dependent on the environment. So some examples of these relationships between the environment and social realities is class relations. So for example, are you a landowner or you are a landless laborer? Gender roles, who collects water from the wells, who tends to the fields, who cooks food, those kinds of things. And then caste or ethnic hierarchies. So who has access to fertile land, wells, forests. So this was also dictated in, it was dictated by caste, but the extent to which it was dictated was not uniform across geographies or across time periods. So, but we just wanted to mention this since it will come up in the interviews that we conduct. So the inequalities of gender and caste continue to shape most aspects of life, not only in Punjab, but across most of India. And therefore, they're also at play in the environmental memories that we are collecting. So the interview we are discussing today is with a 65-year-old man, a Jat Sikh man, who grew up, like I said before, in a Punjabi village in the 1970s. Jat Sikhs are a dominant ethno-religious group in Punjab, and many Jat Sikhs are landowners and have a strong presence in the state's politics. And so that's the socioeconomic context for the interview. In the future, we are also keen to capture stories and experiences of other community members, in particular, the so-called low caste men, upper caste women, and also low caste women. So now to focus on the interview that we conducted, some of the participants' key memories that we captured during the interview are self-sufficiency of village life, the use of natural resources, and the barter system to fulfill everyday needs, crop rotation, fertile soils, and the judicious use of well water. And the participant talked about how his village was a self-sufficient unit and people could fulfill their needs using the natural resources within the village. And very little was bought from the market. Most things were made at home or bartered in exchange for goods and grains, etc., from craftsmen and artisans within the village. And excess of anything was considered bad, and moderation was a way of life. So I'd just like to pause here for a second and reflect on how interesting it is that sustainability was being practiced back then, even when people did not really have a concept or a word to define what they were doing. There was also a deep connection between humans and their natural environment. So, for example, our interviewee talks about how trees were very common in courtyards of houses where people would sit and work to get relief from the heat. Birds and small animals like squirrels often lived in the trees and were almost considered a part of the household. Which is great. Wells were allowed to recharge naturally. Crops were rotated to maintain soil fertility, and village ponds were kept clean through shared responsibility. Most community members used ponds responsibly, and people who misused these collective resources were often reprimanded. So that was just a brief overview of the interview. Navjot, did I miss something, or would you like to add something?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. And just to add into what you just said, I particularly liked where the interviewee said that how um, people and nature were dependent on each other, right? So they were not considered, people did not consider themselves as separate from the nature. They considered themselves as a part or an extension of nature. So, like the interviewee talks about the dependence of certain animals and birds on cattle rearing, right? He talks about how people used to keep animals, like a number of animals in their houses, or and the vultures, birds like vultures, they depended on those dead animals, some of the dead animals for their survival, and some animals also depended on them. So that was a very nice bit about the codependence of nature and people.
So would you say that was your favorite part?
I would say so. I mean, I had so many favorite parts about this interview because it was as Sumit would agree, it was a very nice, detailed, in-depth interview, and we had a chance to talk about the person's memories and how he felt about those memories and how he feels about the change in environment now. And I had many favorite parts. So one of the parts was, like you said, that people ensured sustainability. So the interviewee talks about this particular thing that was installed in the well to make sure that the water was not overexploited, or people didn't draw, like water was given time to replenish. So it was something called mal. So mal was something that was installed in the well that kept drowning in the well. And as soon as the mal started floating on the surface, the water withdrawal was stopped for some time, and given time to replenish. So when the mal drowns again, then they started to withdraw the water again. So I think that was a very nice, very respectful thing to do. How people interacted with the nature and how they gave it time and space, that they were not over exploiting it. There was a kind of reverence for the nature. And also, like you talked about having trees, like shared trees, a group of houses would share trees, right? So because there were no boundaries between houses, so people from different members from different houses, they would share under the same tree, and they would work and they would talk and they would play, and they would do everything under the trees, because the summer season was uh, was longer than the winters, and people had time to avail of the shade of the tree, and they used to work under it and everything. So I think that was beautiful, the sense of community, the solidarity and the brotherhood that people had with each other. And I think even to the point, people, like I said before, that people considered themselves as a part of the nature, or nature as a part of themselves, that people worshipped nature, right? So I have seen people worshipping, you might also have seen, Sumit, people worshipping certain trees, right? They even do it today. I mean, they worship the banyan tree, they worship the peepal tree. So because these trees give us everything that we need from them. They give us shade, they give us they have like they give animals place to live, animals and birds place to live, they give us oxygen and everything, right? So they are something that, I mean, we might think today that this is superstition or it is rooted in superstition, but I think the roots of it are very profound, and it's how people used to think of nature as not something separate from them. I think the othering of nature that we see today is a very new phenomenon. So it wasn't the case before. So I think that was very beautiful. First, the sustainability, and then the connection between people and nature. So what was your favorite part?
Yeah, no, I agree with so much of what you said. I'll talk about my favorite part in a bit, but I also wanted to say, like that separation between humans and their environment. That's like you said, it's very new. That's so true because, right, like I mean, there was no clear separation even in sort of spaces where people slept, where they rested. like you were saying, they would rest under the trees and all. So uh, it's interesting to think about how they perceived nature. So for us, for example, what I'm trying to say is for us, in this, because both of us live in the global north now. You're in the US, I'm in Canada. And so for us to experience nature is almost like a task. So especially we are not used to these harsh winters, so
Yeah.
we end up waiting for the summer. And but even when summer rolls around, we have to make a day trip or something. Go out hiking into the mountains to experience it really, because in our day-to-day lives, we are just in our houses. Or if we are not in our houses, or I mean, we are in buildings, right? I mean, we are in our offices, houses, maybe in a cafe, maybe in a gym, but all our activities are being largely carried out within man-made structures. Um, yeah, I'm sure like I see people running outside. So
Hmm.
yeah, maybe they're experiencing more of the natural environment, but I don't think so because most people who are running outside are also wearing their headphones.
Yeah.
So they're listening to something while they're running. So they're not paying attention to the natural environment that they're
Yeah.
experiencing. Whereas, what our interviewee describes, they didn't have to make a conscious effort to
Mm.
go out and experience nature. I mean, that's just such a new concept. Like they just did it. Everything they did during the day, whether it was cooking or working in the fields or sleeping, resting,
Yeah.
everything was being carried out in nature.
Yeah.
So yeah. So my favorite part actually of the interview, and I gave this also considerable thought because, like you, I enjoyed the whole thing. But the bit where he's talking about how from about 12 noon to about 4 or 5 p.m.
Mm.
people wouldn't work because it was
Yeah.
too hot to work
Hmm.
in the summers, and everybody would gather under the trees or in someone's courtyard where there was shade, and they would just sort of sit around and talk to each other, maybe drink some tea and
Mm.
chat some more, and basically do nothing. And then I guess they took a nap also during that time, and then they would wake up. They would resume working at around 4 or 5 when
Mm.
after sunset, I guess. So that's such a great concept. I think like
Yeah.
we work too hard. It's
Yeah.
and it comes at a great cost.
Yeah.
Like our mental health is compromised, our physical health is compromised. Um, so when I'm in India, I think I get more chances to do that kind of
Mm.
thing, to sit down with family and friends
Yeah.
and drink lots of cha
Yeah.
or chai and,
Mm.
do nothing, just
Hmm.
basically gossip and talk about very ordinary things,
Hmm.
nothing of world-shattering
Yeah.
responsibility or anything. So and they did that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So no wonder their mental health was better.
Oh, yeah,
So
I agree with you 100%. I think
yeah.
also when we were listening to the interview, I think we discussed at one point that moderation was the key, right? So nobody was working too hard. I mean, they were working hard. I mean, they were doing manual labor, most of them, and it was hard work. But moderation was the key. They took time to rest. And not only in terms of work and rest, moderation was prevalent in almost every aspect of life. So the needs and wants of people were very limited, right? So they must almost all of their needs and wants were fulfilled from the village itself. And I think at one point we also talked about how the interviewee talks about the village being a self-sufficient unit. So almost all of your necessities were fulfilled from the village itself, and there was barter system. You exchanged goods, right, in exchange for services or other goods. So I think that was a beautiful concept. People were living virtually without money and without like overly high. aspirations or anything like that. And they were very satisfied with their lives, and they were living in sync with the nature, which is the most beautiful thing about the thing that we are focusing on today. So I think that was very nice, and it was a privilege to have. And it's a pity that we lack that privilege today.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think I saw this research last year uh, about how they are now recommending spending time in nature. So, for example,
Mm,
taking walks in forests. If you live near a forest,
mm,
go take a walk in the forest for about 15-20 minutes every day to help keep stress levels down. Because
mm.
you know this, you've experienced it, I've experienced it, I'm sure everyone has, that stress levels are really high nowadays, which
Yeah,
seems to have become a global truth.
yeah,
So yeah, and so research actually shows very good positive impacts
yeah.
of spending time in nature.
Yeah, I love reading about how people are coming back to the basics, basically. So I was just the other day I was reading this article about shoes. So how shoes as an invention have changed people's feet, like their bone structures of the feet. So people are developing gouts nowadays, and they are the shoes, they are constraining the bones of the feet, and they are making them more constricted. And there are new inventions where people have come up with these barefoot shoes, you know.
Right.
So so you must have seen those. So I just love reading about those things where we are coming back to where we started from, like after doing everything and after, seeing the effects of those inventions and those things. I mean, those inventions have certainly helped everyone, but basically it's all coming down to the most basic things in life: spending time in nature, spending time barefoot, like don't wear shoes, go run in the nature, have interact with the nature. So the things that people used to do naturally, it wasn't a special task. So the things that we are, like you said, where people in the village, they interacted with nature in a very natural way. So it wasn't a special task for them. Women used to wash clothes in the ponds. They used to cook in earthenwares. And the men used to work in the fields, and the men who weren't working in the fields or artisans, they were working on their craft in a very environmentally friendly way. So I think that was very, very nice way to interact with the nature and to ensure sustainability, and that nature was not exploited at all.
Yeah, I agree. Only thing is, I don't think our natural environments are clean enough
Mm,
or safe enough. Maybe, well, safety is can be contested, but certainly not clean enough to walk barefoot and
mm,
experience things in that way anymore.
yeah,
Like at least in India, I find that
yeah,
yeah, like that's what has driven the need for this project actually.
yeah.
So yeah, so walking barefoot in India, I mean, I won't do it.
No, no, you cannot
Yeah,
even imagine doing that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So moving on from talking about favorite bits of the interview, uh, do you want to talk about the choice of using the interview to write a creative story instead of, writing academic prose? And you've done an excellent job, of course. Let me commend you here.
Hmm.
I guess we'll put in the description where people can access the story, right?
Yeah, we can do that.
And so, do you want to talk about the that choice that you made?
Sure, yeah. So I think we have also discussed this in some way before. We have been wanting to do this for a long time. I mean, you and I together, we also discussed about writing a graphic novel at some point, but that didn't work out. So I think storytelling is a very storytelling is a very intuitive thing that is in every human being, I guess. So I guess because a story speaks to everyone, right? And as human beings, we want to connect to other people at a very basic human level. And I think story does that work very well to bridge, from the gap from one human to another. So and as we know, it's the oldest human tradition which was used to preserve history orally and stuff like that. So people used to tell each other stories. There was no written word. And the good thing and beautiful thing about a story is that people remember it and they can directly relate to it. And if we had chosen to write an academic article or academic prose, then we would have been talking about the experience of this specific interviewee or the person, right? And the audience would have been limited. But with the story, I think you speak about everyone and to everyone. And we wanted people to feel that it's their story. I mean, people have these memories, people have these experiences, but they don't feel like it is anything like extraordinary or anything that needs to be told. But we want to listen to those stories. We want the people to um, we want the people to feel that these are special stories that we want to archive. These are the stories associated with the environment that we no longer see. So I think that the story is a very good way to approach a wide audience, and it's a very good way to appeal to human emotions at a very basic level. So I guess that's why we decided to go with the story.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. Um, Also, I think, in addition to what you said, stories they seem to, they have the potential to be more ethical,
Mm,
in the sense that when you are writing an academic piece, the nature of academic prose is such that it sort of reduces participants to data. And
mm,
there's nothing inherently wrong with it. I mean, that kind of output is required and it's necessary. But there is that restriction in academic prose, that you reduce human participants into data. And whereas I find that when we are approaching this in a story format, we are able to do much more with it and to restore the richness of the experience of participants. So it seems that it's treating them more ethically. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
I agree, yeah. And also, I think people who love listening to stories, and especially to the Indian mind, stories appeal more than, a formal piece of writing. Because from the very beginning, we have been told stories by our grandmothers and grandfathers, and we have been reading stories in schools, the Panchtantra and Aesop's fables, and they all have a moral. So, as Indians, I think we have an inherent um need to derive a moral from a story. So, we can also look at like this way, that what is the moral of these stories, right? So, what are we learning? What's the takeaway? So, maybe that's also a kind of a motivation to let people speak their stories, that the memories that people have, and the need to archive those stories. Like, why do we need to um, archive these stories, so that the future generations, they can read it and they can derive a moral from it, maybe. So why do we need to care about our environment, how it used to be before, and how people used to interact with the environment, and how we are doing it now? So maybe that's one of the things, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So
Mm.
you know what the next question is?
Mm.
What is the moral from this
Oh.
story for you?
Yeah, about this particular story
This particular
that we
story.
wrote.
Well, I mean, I guess from the whole interview, or maybe
Mm.
if you want to focus on the story that you wrote,
Mm.
that's fine too. Do you think there's like a
I
specific
can briefly
takeaway?
talk about the story as well,
Yeah.
like in a few sentences. So, in this particular story, we talk about a woman who lives in rural Punjab, and the story starts with her waking up and doing the household chores and everything. And she waits for the water carrier whose task it is to fill the water pots in every household of the village. So we talk about the interaction between them, the woman and the water carrier, and we also in narrating that story, in weaving that story, we touch upon the very natural elements, the very natural interactions that they both have with the environment during their daily activities, right? So like we talk about the woman brushing her teeth with the datan, and then using a very eco-friendly broom made with leaves from the khajur tree, from the palm tree, and and the man, that the water carrier, he withdraws water from the wells, but then we see then he sees that the mal is swimming on the water surface. So leaves the water untouched, right? So it's his way to ensure sustainability. So it's his way to ensure that water isn't overexploited or withdrawn beyond its limit. And he knows that from years of experience that the water needs to be left untouched for some time and needs to be given time to replenish. So he doesn't withdraw water from that particular well on that day, and he goes to a well that is farther. So, and also then as we end the story, we talk about how so it's the late 60s or early 70s, something between them, between that time. And that was a time when green revolution was taking shape in Punjab. So green revolution as an experiment was starting to be conducted in Punjab, and people were being given these seeds to plant. And both of them, they wonder about the seeds, both the woman and the water carrier, the man. So both of them wonder about the seeds, and the woman is asking the water carrier about his opinion on the seeds. And he is saying that he doesn't know much, but that people are saying that they are high yielding seeds, and there will be so much of a harvest that people won't be able to contain it, right? But then he wonders, and it's a question for all of us as well, like, how do they know when to stop with the withdrawing from the earth, right? So he presents an equivalent with the wells, that he knows when to stop taking from the wells when the mal is swimming on the surface. But how would they tell it with the earth, right? So I think it's a very this particular reflection, it poses a very crucial question for everyone reading the story as well, right? So how do we know when to stop taking from the nature? And I think listening to the interview and listening to the interviewee's point of view and reflecting on it, I think we have talked about this enough, that sustainability and moderation was the key, right? So how people ensured that nature wasn't overexploited, nature was given time to replenish and rejuvenate, right? So that was the story. That was the summary of the story. And the your question was, what was the more moral of the story, or what is the of this particular story, or the moral of the whole project that we are doing? So I guess the moral is to preserve the memories, or um, also preserve the memories. And also I think it is very important to know what people's emotions are on these topics, right? So I think people themselves sometimes are not aware of these emotions unless someone asks them explicitly about them, right? So people have very profound memories and emotions, and their sense of place is constantly changing, and it has changed. But I think in order to consider Punjab as a serious ground for discussion on climate change and environmental degradation, I think it's very important to establish that the environment of Punjab and the people of Punjab have suffered, and they are still suffering from a loss that will never be that can never be repaired, that is beyond repair now. So I think that our project will be, um, you can say, a small starting point for discussions to be started on Punjab, because I think Punjab or North India is still not considered when climate change, when we talk about global climate change. There are many discussions on um, India's neighboring countries on climate change, like Bangladesh and Nepal. But I don't think India or North India especially is considered seriously when we talk about global climate change. So I guess that our project in some way can serve as a small stimulus for these discussions.
Yeah.
What do you say, Sumit?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that I agree with you. I think you've done a great job of sort of capturing the urgency of the project through what you just communicated. And when you were talking about the story that you wrote, in which the story ends with the water carrier
Mm,
wondering how will we know when it's like when are we supposed to stop taking from the
mm,
ground or from the soil. I almost had goosebumps because that's
mm,
such a, I mean, we know this, right? Intellectually, everybody knows that the Earth's resources are finite, and yet we treat natural resources like they're infinite, and that that we can keep taking from them. And yeah, so I think so that's the moral right there. So you did end with a moral question.
mm,
Um, One that I hope people take the time to reflect on.
mm.
Like, it's, I hope that when they read the story, they pause and think for a bit. And we didn't mention that the story is going to be available in Punjabi as well, right? So,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
we didn't mention that, but
yeah,
it
so,
is going to be available in Punjabi and English both.
yeah, yeah, so that's great. So
Mm-hmm.
we hope people read it and
Yeah,
reflect and engage with the
yeah.
story and let us know what they think. The other thing that came to mind when you were narrating the story, which I don't think we've discussed so far, because we were so involved in the logistics and then we were trying to get everything done. But today when you were talking, I sort of paused to think that our interviewee was a man,
Mm,
and yet the protagonist of your story is a woman,
yeah,
and both of us are gender studies scholars,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so
Why
you
was that?
was that a conscious choice
No,
or
it wasn't. It wasn't a conscious choice at all. Yeah, it just seemed to work naturally. You
right?
know, like when we talk about the household or the when we talk about starting a day, I think the most natural way to start is with the woman doing the household work. So I think that just came naturally, and I think it's very hmm, that is very interesting, and that is something that we can discuss, like why and how did that happen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking, wow.
Hmm.
We were talking about not. I hope we have not reduced the interviewee's experiences by changing the gender of the protagonist, but but it is
Yeah.
what it is. It's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can write more. Like
Mm,
maybe we can also write a story from the point of view of a male protagonist,
of
and
course.
so maybe that
Yeah.
would help.
We have such a rich interview. We can just like take out the elements from it and develop a whole story around it, like we did with this one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and like we said before at the beginning, hopefully we get to do interviews with other kinds of community members, people
Yeah.
belonging to other genders, gender and caste. So that will be interesting
Yeah.
also.
I
Yeah,
hope people reach out to us, and we hope to reach out to more people with this podcast and with the story. I hope that more and more people read it, and because all the memories and all the experiences, they are very valuable. So we really want to document those experiences and memories, and we want to preserve them as a very valuable archive for Punjab's environment.
I agree. Yeah, no, it's a project that's close to the heart,
Yeah.
and I hope that we can continue doing this.
Yes.
Um, so I think that is that a wrap then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And also before we close, I guess the idea is that every time we do an interview and we analyze and write stories, we also do an accompanying podcast episode, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
this was
uh,
fun.
this was fun. All right. See you next time.
Okay, see you. Bye.